Well, good evening. This is Dave Jones with StormCenter Communications and GeoCollaborate. It is about 5:35 East Coast time. This update is based on the Hurricane Center's 5 p.m. Eastern update on Tropical Storm Helene. Helene has increased in intensity, now 50 miles per hour, moving to the northwest at about 10 knots. It has taken a little bit jog further to the northwest, which does impact the track somewhat. I'm not displaying the center track from the National Hurricane Center because there's still a chance that could wobble somewhat. And we really want people to pay attention, not just inside the cone, but wait till you see the impacts outside of the cone. But right now, take a look at that satellite presentation. It is impressive, and you can see what's going on here around that circulation. These are all thunderstorms, and the more thunderstorms we see around the center of a developing tropical system, the more intense it's going to get. So again, 50-mile-per-hour winds right now. The Hurricane Hunter aircraft will be back in there later this evening investigating this, and I suspect they're going to find even stronger a storm as Helene gets its act together over very warm waters, temperatures in the mid to upper 80s in the Western Caribbean, and it gets no better when it goes up into the Gulf of Mexico. Some temperatures and buoys reporting 87, 88 degrees as far as the sea surface temperatures go. But you can see that broad circulation. It's really winding up here, and there's about the center. Right now, the center is covered by a central dense overcast, but that will clear itself out once the storm intensifies and starts to evacuate air out of the center of the storm. But let me take you a little bit closer to the 1-minute satellite imagery so you can see what's going on. The flashes, once again, like in the previous update, are lightning flashes detected by the GOES Global Lightning Mapper, the GLM. And so you'll see these periodic flashes of lightning. And that means that strong thunderstorms are forming. There's a lot of convection there. That means thunderstorm activity. And here's what's going on. This is about the center of the storm in here under the central dense overcast. But like I said, these thunderstorms will form. Look at all these thunderstorms. There are just tons of them. And that's how we get a mature hurricane to form. When all those thunderstorms close off in an eye wall, you can see right down through the center of the hurricane and see the eye. And then that's when we have a storm to reckon with. And it looks like from the National Hurricane Center's official forecast, we will be looking at a major Category 3 hurricane at landfall. There is still room for fluctuation either on the lower end or the higher end, but the biggest thing about this storm is the size. Helene's size will likely cause an extensive area to be affected by the storm's hazards, and I'll show you that on GeoCollaborate. Let me take this full screen so you can see the satellite imagery here. And you'll notice more lightning happening because I widened out the view. But look at these thunderstorms boiling up. This is some of the last imagery that we'll get before the sunset. There'll be some more imagery available, but all of this is very intense thunderstorm activity here. I think that the hurricane hunters, when they go and investigate, they're going to find a lot more turbulence in this storm than they did in the previous one earlier today. And if I widen out as well, so you can just see a little bit larger part. Here is Florida. This is southern Florida here. Here's the Florida Keys. See some thunderstorms firing up very close to the Florida Keys there on the outer edges of the storm. And so we can say from Key West all the way down to, oh gosh, Nicaragua, Honduras, and beyond. That's the size of this storm. You can widen out just a little bit here and show you what this looks like. So look at this cirrus outflow here so you can get a good idea for, as this latest imagery loads for the loop, how much is going to be impacted as the storm moves up here of Florida. The entire state of Florida will be impacted, and there have been widespread flood watches issued. Hurricane warnings are now in effect. I'll show you GeoCollaborate here as we'll go full screen to GeoCollaborate. So here we are, and I'll just move this slightly up just a little bit so you can see what's going on. We have tropical storm warnings now in effect for the Keys. We have storm surge warnings issued for the Gulf Coast of Florida. So storm surge warnings all the way up and around to the panhandle of Florida. That means this storm is going to be pushing so much water well outside of the cone. See that as I zoom in a little bit? See that? The cone is pretty narrow. That just shows the probability of where the center of the storm is expected to move. So we'll have many impacts. Look at this. On Lake Okeechobee, a tropical storm watch in effect. Tropical storm watches on the east coast of Florida, and even tropical storm watches up into Georgia along the Savannah River here. Tropical storm watches as that long, broad wind field is going to be coming in around the storm and up into these coastal counties in southeastern Georgia, where tropical storm force winds are likely. So let me take the cone away here just for a moment so we can talk about some of the impacts. So let's go down to the cone. I'll turn that off, and here we go. So now we'll focus in on some of these impacts here in Florida. Tropical storm watch around Lake Okeechobee. It's very open there, so those winds are going to easily reach tropical storm force as the storm moves up into this area. Also down towards Miami. In Miami, we have tropical cyclone statements being issued for potential tropical storm conditions. And even on the West Coast, that's where we're going to have a lot of storm surge impacts. All this red here from the Weather Service watches, warnings, and advisories indicate offshore hurricane warnings. Hurricane warnings in effect in the Bright area, tropical storm warnings to the south, and it looks like the hurricane warnings for the land have been issued just north of Clearwater, right on the county boundary of Pasco County and Pinellas County is where the hurricane warning starts and goes all up and around the Big Bend area. So hurricane warnings all up in this area. I'll back out just a little bit so you can see that. These are all hurricane warnings in effect. We haven't talked about storm surge yet, just hurricane warnings. Now, this is a tropical storm warning for the parts of Tampa Bay. And that tropical storm warning will continue in effect through the duration. However, we have to watch the movement of this storm very closely because any wobble to the east means those strong hurricane force winds could impact Tampa Bay. Now, because we're going to have such a large wind field, we are going to get a lot of storm surge into Tampa Bay. When I click on this here, there's a hurricane watch for Tampa Bay, and there is also a storm surge warning. So I'm going to turn off the layers here showing the National Weather Service watches, warnings, and advisories so we can talk for a moment about the storm surge. So I'm going to scroll down here in GeoCollaborate, and I'm going to turn on the peak surge numbers here for coastal Florida, and they're significant. So if we start down to the south in this yellow area, these are storm surge expectations of 3 to 5 feet, all the way from down in the Everglades, the southern tip of Florida here, up towards Collier County, Naples, includes Naples, and in Cape Coral, Bonita Springs here, Fort Myers, 3 to 5 feet of storm surge expected in this area. And just to the north of that, the storm surge is expected to be higher at 4 to 7 feet. 4 to 7 feet in this area. In St. Petersburg, the Tampa area, it's a little bit higher, 5 to 8 feet of storm surge. Go back to GeoCollaborate here. Sorry about that. And so in St. Pete, once again, 5 to 8 feet of storm surge expected because this wind field is going to be so broad The winds are going to be rushing into Tampa Bay as soon as the storm gets west of Tampa and northwest of Tampa. Those winds are going to be rushing in from the southwest right into the bay. Now, as we get a little bit further north, this is where the hurricane warning is in effect in Pasco County, coastal Pasco County. 6 to 10 feet of storm surge is expected in Pasco County. And then as we get around to Homosassa Springs in Citrus County, over to Levy County, Dixie County, Taylor County, all the way over here, Jefferson County and Wakulla County and Franklin County, we're talking about storm surges here of 10 to 15 feet. That actually ends on the border of Wakulla County and Franklin County. Franklin goes back down just slightly to 5 to 10 feet. These are devastating storm surges. Anyone who lives along these areas should listen to local authorities. And if evacuation orders are given, some are being given right now in the St. Pete, Tampa, or Sarasota area, listen and look up those evacuation orders if they exist. Now look at this over on the east coast of Florida. On the east coast of Florida, including Jacksonville, from Palm Coast north up to Brunswick, there in Georgia and Savannah, we're talking about a storm surge of 1 to 3 feet. So we're going to have high impact here on the southeast coast because of the large circulation around this hurricane when it comes up here. And so I want to turn attention now to inland impacts, because we are going to have inland impacts because of this storm. So in GeoCollaborate, I'm going to turn on the tropical storm wind arrival time and the wind probability of tropical storm force winds. So here's the probability of tropical storm force winds, and here is the arrival time expected. And I'll zoom out here just a little bit so you can see these times. So here we go in the Florida Keys. I'll zoom in here to the Florida Keys. Here we are, Florida Keys. 8 p.m. tomorrow night, tropical storm force winds will be coming offshore from Cuba and hitting Key West in that area sometime overnight, around midnight tomorrow night, Thursday morning. By Thursday at 8 a.m., tropical storm force winds will be hitting mainland Florida across the Everglades, south of Cape Coral. But around 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock in the morning, tropical storm force winds on Thursday should be making their way up towards these areas in here, like Port Charlotte. Port Charlotte will see a 3 to 5 foot storm surge, most likely, into Sarasota County. Look for the tropical storm force winds to reach around 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning on Thursday, and they will spread to the north. Some of these wind gusts in heavier rain showers could reach hurricane force in the Bradenton, Sarasota areas around Tampa, St. Petersburg. Look for tropical storm force winds to reach around noontime on Thursday, 11 a.m. to noontime on Thursday. And then the storm will be racing, moving fairly quickly. And look at this. These are tropical storm force winds expectations Thursday at 8 p.m. onshore, passing through Tallahassee. Thursday at 8 p.m. So in the evening of Thursday, this is when the tide is going to rise quickly on those strong winds, and they're going to also begin to rise on Wednesday as the storm approaches, even early on Wednesday as those winds circulate around the storm and building up in the Gulf of Mexico. So this is a look at the expected time of arrival for tropical storm force winds. And look at this, tropical storm force winds arriving Thursday evening into Thursday night into central Georgia. Central Georgia could see tropical storm force winds. Atlanta, you're under a flood watch, and it looks like wind damage could happen in metro Atlanta during the evening on Thursday into Friday morning. This storm is going to pack a punch. It's going to be intense when it hits. Category 3 is the forecast, but it will maintain its intensity somewhat as perhaps a Category 1 by the time it reaches central Georgia. Even though it will be decreasing in intensity, the storm itself will be moving at a rapid enough clip that it will maintain tropical storm status. Now, I'm going to turn off here the probability of wind speed here, the tropical storm wind probabilities, but I do want to show the hurricane wind radii forecast. So the tropical storm force winds arriving at 8 a.m. on Thursday, but look at the radii of tropical storm force winds once the storm makes landfall. We're talking about 50 to 60 to 70 mile per hour winds all the way up towards Macon, Georgia, and diminishing though a little bit, but tropical storm force winds in the Atlanta metro area. So this is serious. This is going to be a high impact event, and we're going to be keeping an eye on it for the movement of fleet utility vehicles. You can see in the crawl above that mutual assistance has been activated, and that means that we're going to see crews gather from many, many states, including the District of Columbia, are moving, and they will be staging in a safe location away from the damaging winds and the flooding rains. Recapping, this is the wind threat that has been issued by the National Weather Service. And I want to point something out here. The wind threat for damage will extend far inland, as I mentioned. But the National Weather Service has extended the wind threat. Look at that yellow area. That's a higher likelihood of wind damage within that yellow area. It's even higher in the orange and highest in the red. But it has extended to include the Atlanta metro area, even into parts of extreme western South Carolina and southwestern South Carolina and eastern Alabama. So this is expansive, and it looks like we're going to have impacts from these storms' wind throughout the state of Georgia. That's going to be quite a power restoration effort, which is why mutual assistance is already underway. Now, from a flood risk perspective, this has also been extended to the north somewhat. The area in red is a high likelihood that flooding will be experienced. So if you live in this area, if you are going to be staging vehicles in this area, it's not a good idea to stage vehicles in the red or the yellow areas because rainfall intensities could be 2, 3, in some cases 4 inches of rain per hour, and that could flood staging locations. So be very vigilant about where utility crews stage for mutual assistance response. And also in the yellow areas, that is a high likelihood of flooding rain as well, extending from Alabama into even Kentucky and North Carolina and into approaching parts of southern West Virginia there. So this is the way it looks. Wednesday, Florida, flooding and heavy wind, rain and storm surge. Thursday, Florida, Georgia, and Alabama will be experiencing the storm. And on into Friday, Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, South Carolina, parts of North Carolina, the mountains of North Carolina may see some serious rainfall because those rains will be enhanced by the mountains. Orographic lift enhances rainfall intensity and leads to flooding in many cases. Virginia, extreme southwest or western Virginia has a possibility of flooding. Also West Virginia and Kentucky. Chances get much lower in the green area, but if you're in the yellow or red areas, that is a high likelihood of flooding. And so the National Weather Service watches, warnings, and advisories. There are a lot of them out there. Stay tuned to your local National Weather Service forecast office. Your local broadcast meteorologist will keep you updated on watches and warnings, and also whether there are evacuations in order. If evacuations are issued, If they ask you to leave coastal areas, leave if you can. If you don't have transportation, contact your local authorities so they can get you out of there. Storm surge is nothing to play with along the Florida West Coast. I'm afraid we're going to see quite a bit of impact from storm surge on the west coast of Florida because of this storm. So we'll keep you posted. I will update once again in the morning tomorrow, probably after the National Hurricane Center's 11 a.m. advisory. The storm is getting more intense. We are seeing the storm system wrapping up, as you can see. And I think by this time tomorrow, we will have a hurricane on our hands, if not sooner, because this system looks like it means business. And we're going to be monitoring it, making sure we can share data across platforms, making sure we share it through the SICE hub, through the All Hazards Consortium, sensitive information sharing environment. That's what this video update is focusing on too, providing information to private sector partners, to federal and state agency organizations and their private sector liaisons, so we can all be on the same page when we're talking about the movement of fleet utility vehicles. So we have a high impact event on the way, and we'll be here to monitor it with you. I'm meteorologist Dave Jones with GeoCollaborate and StormCenter Communications. Have yourself a good night and prepare if you are in the path of this storm.